Hi there. Today we're here in touch with small businesses. My name is Carl Knobloch from the SBA. What's really interesting, typically we talk to small businesses in this program, but today we're going to do something different. We're going to focus on people that help small businesses. And today as my guest I have with me first, Barry Lipson from Score, who's really down the hallway from us, who helps small businesses.
Right, we're right in your office.
Ray Fargo from the University of Pittsburgh Small Business Development Center, just really down the road from us.
Yes.
Ray, thank you for coming here today.
Thank you for having me, Carl.
And then it's Deb Wojcik from Procurement Technical Assistance Center at California University. And welcome, Debbie.
Thank you, Carl.
And so let's start out with this. Barry, you have, quote unquote, your main office in our office location, but you also have satellite locations, strong arm out across the area that you cover to assist small businesses.
Well, there are SCORE chapters in various areas, but basically any place there's a hot spot is our office. Mm-hmm. I meet with clients, or we meet with clients at the Moon Library, the Sewickley Y, Starbucks, any place that's convenient for both the counselor and the person who's in or interested in going into small business. One of our key features is that we are volunteers. We are all people who have come up through the business ranks. We have business experience in different areas. We try to hook you up with a counselor in the area that you need help in. If you need help with people who have experience in different areas, we'll bring in co-counselors, and we don't charge.
That's good. Deb, when did the Procurement Technical Assistance Center program start?
Back in 1984, the PTACs, or nationwide programs, and funding from the federal government developed around 1985, and that's when the PTAC programs began.
Okay, so they've been in existence, gosh, what, almost 25 years?
25, yeah, just about 25 years.
Okay.
And nationwide there's about 93 PTACs, and here in Pennsylvania there's 10.
10, wow.
10.
So we have plenty of coverage for our small businesses.
Absolutely.
Now, what does exactly the Procurement Technical Assistance Center do?
PTACs are agencies that help businesses with federal, state, and local government contracting. We're a resource out there to help educate companies on doing business with the government. Okay.
And originally when that came out, was the original focus on federal government only, and then it expanded into state and city, or was that always the intent to do all three?
Originally it was federal, and then they expanded it into the state and local areas.
Okay, which has been a huge advantage with that. Ray,
yes.
You started when with the University of Pittsburgh?
I started with the University of Pittsburgh in 1995, but we have a connection sitting on this couch because prior to working for the University of Pittsburgh Small Business Development Center, I worked in California University of Pennsylvania in something called the Mon Valley Renaissance, which GACO is a part of.
Okay.
So Debbie and I go back even a little bit earlier relative to working with small businesses in western Pennsylvania. But the Small Business Development Center is a national program, as you know. We are primarily funded through the Small Business Administration as well as the Department of Community and Economic Development. In Pennsylvania, we have 18 centers that cover all of the counties within Pennsylvania, but specifically here in western Pennsylvania and in the Pittsburgh area, we have the University of Pittsburgh Small Business Development Center as well as Duquesne University. So we at the Small Business Development Center have been around for 25 years as well. And so the SBA's been around over 50 years. We've been half of that life. And SCORE has been around for how many years, Barry?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't prepare, but it's been around for about the same length of time.
Okay. Yeah, and Barry, you started with SCORE in what, 2005?
2005, right.
Yeah, so I find it really ironic because 1985, Deb starts with GACO. 1995, you start with the University of Pittsburgh Small Business 10-year cycle. 10 years later, Barry starts with SCORE. So I find it very fascinating over a 20-year span how people 10 years later have come in to help small business. Ray, back to yours is kind of unique because small business development centers typically, lots of times, they're located just in their one locality and people actually come to them. Mm-hmm. You guys have kind of developed a different model.
Yes.
And could you explain that a little bit?
Sure. Well, we definitely feel it's important to be within all the communities of our territory that we serve. At University of Pittsburgh, we cover Allegheny, Washington, and Greene counties. In Allegheny County, of course, we have our main office on the University of Pittsburgh's campus. And for those that remember Forbes Field, we are actually in around right field of Forbes Field. I can see the Bill Mazeroski wall from my office. Mm-hmm. So we have our university office, but also we have outreach offices in Allegheny County as well. We've partnered with Riverside Center for Innovation and the Diversity Business Resource Center to have an office here in the north side where we're actually taping this program today. And that many business owners enjoy that office because it's not as hard to find a parking place, and you don't have the congestion as you do in Oakland sometimes. We also have an office in the University Applied Research Park in Harmarville. It's called U-Park. And so for the business owners in that part of the county of Allegheny, we have an office there to meet with the business owners. But also, more importantly, we have Washington and Greene County. And we do not use a circuit rider system. We have dedicated staff members both in Washington County, and our offices are right in the city of Washington, across from the county courthouse, and we're actually co-housed with the Washington County Council on Economic Development, and they're an SBA microlender, as you well know. And in Greene County, right in Waynesburg, the county seat, we're in the Economic Development Building, which is called the Fort Jackson Building. So we've found it very important to be out in outreach offices on a regular basis so business owners do not have to come within the city and be more convenient. But also I want to point out, if you're an existing business owner and for any reason you can't come to our office, we will travel to that business. And we recommend that we like to have a meeting outside of the actual business location because business owners are always distracted and everyone's coming in the door and say, you have to take this call or I need to talk to you about this. But again, as we go through the process, in order for us to really understand the business, where it's at, how it's set up, we do make office and visits to all the locations of our clients that we serve.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Deb, you're also, you kind of have, as you talked about, Pennsylvania has its fair share of P-tax. But GEICO, a number of years ago, actually, in my opinion, was very progressive by also going with the concept of setting up satellite offices so you could extend your arm further, and which is, I think, a huge benefit to your operation. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. In '85 we opened our main office, which was on the campus of California University. And at that time, we worked with businesses. We had them come into our office and meet with them to discuss government contracting. But then we saw a need to open up some satellite offices, and we have 2 satellite offices. One is located in Pittsburgh, here on River Avenue, same location where Ray's facility is. And we also have one at Slippery Rock University. So all of our offices offer the same services. It's just whatever is more convenient for the companies to go to. And we're there to provide the services for the company.
And if I'm correct, I think each one of you are more than happy to go to the place of business to see their operation, correct? Or
yes.
Is that...
We'll go if the business requests that we come out, but typically we like them to come to us because we have a lot of resource materials that we use when we're working with companies, and it's to their advantage to come to one of our offices so that we can go through all that information.
Okay. Barry, your area of expertise, where do you focus in as that SCORE counselor? Where's your area of expertise that they typically tap into?
Well, I'm in kind of interesting situation because by profession, I'm an attorney. But for SCORE, I can't practice law. So I can give you all the things you have to think about and then tell you to consult with your own attorney. But at least I can open up the avenues. For example, I was meeting in a general meeting with someone who was very successful in the shoe business. and she had just gone through an explanation of how she was between two very elegant dress stores, and she was selling shoes, and she was going to buy the high-priced shoes, and at that point she cried for help, and she got some of our SCORE counselors who were experienced in retailing, and the first thing they looked at her and said, "You love shoes. When you go out in the marketplace and see a shoe that you like, you buy it." And she said, "Yes." And they said, "No, inventory control is what you have to do. You can't buy everything. You can't have too many shoes in the back room. You have to have enough for the different sizes, but not too many." And she cut back, and then she started to become more successful. And then they focused in and said, "Do you really want to have the high-end shoes, or do you want to have fashionable shoes for less? So the ones that look, wear, and feel like the high-class shoes, but don't cost like the high-class shoes." And now the store is very successful.
Okay, great.
If I can interject something, Barry, we find many business owners that really are so concerned that they're going to not be able to have the inventory. So they want to have everything, and they want to sell everything to everyone. But in a small business, inventory is one of the issues that you have to keep a constant watch on and really understand what products should we be having in our portfolio of available, saleable items versus the ones that maybe we shouldn't have. And so retailers, at first, always want to have everything there. And sometimes I find that when I walk into a startup retailer, it's too cluttered. They don't have the right design. And that's where a SCORE counselor or an SBDC counselor could come in and really focus in on, let's get the priorities, because cash flow is always an issue for a small business. And the more you invest in inventory, the less you have for marketing, the less you have for people.
That's right, and that's why they have to learn the magic of drop shipping. Many people can make nice living on drop shipping. Now, drop shipping is where you have a store, or you show someone either out of a catalog, or you show them in your store the item, or even over the internet, because that's where a lot of business happens these days. And they order it, and you then go to the manufacturer and you say, "Put my label on it and ship it to my customer." And you haven't held any inventory, you haven't tied up your funds in inventory, but you get the profit and your customer gets what they want.
Yes, and you've hit on something that's very interesting when you talk about that, because if you think about FedEx, where's the warehouses for FedEx? There's no warehouse. They're a constant movement. But what's interesting also, FedEx thought they had the perfect system until Katrina hit. Then all of a sudden they had all these boxes coming, but no place to put them. And so they had to revamp their program, but it was the concept of they're virtual. Everything's just moving for them, and they don't see anything. But Deb, the opposite is really when you're dealing with government contracting, when you're talking about inventory, the government pretty much sets the specs for you and says, this is what you'll have on hand, even though it may be 2 years before they touch that piece of equipment. Right. So it's kind of like a total paradigm from what we tell the regular business world to when we're dealing with government contracting.
Right.
Is that typically what you find with it? Is they'll sit here and say, well, you need to have 100 ready to go within 48 hours, or
some contracts are like that. Yes, you have to have it, on stock and ready to ship out because the government needs those items quickly. Others, shipping time is extended and it's not required to be there, in a couple of days or 1 day or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's really unique with government contracting is they may get an order and just say, I only want 2.
Oh, they can go with 1, 2, or they can go with hundreds.
Right.
So the ones that are ones and twos too, you have to think about maybe the small business has a better opportunity of bidding on those because the larger guys don't want to touch the smaller contracts. So it's to the small business advantage to bid on those smaller dollar value contracts too.
Mm-hmm. But it's also typically, I think the challenge with that lots of times they'll say, give me a quote for 1, give me a quote for 3, and give me a quote if I want 50. And it may be any of those, but we're not sure.
Yes, that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you have to quote it based on what they're asking
mm-hmm.
for, and take everything into consideration too when you're quoting. You have to look at the requirements of the contract. A lot of the companies that we work with, they don't read in detail the actual solicitation. So they see a solicitation and they think, oh yes, I can bid on this, but they're not reading the requirements, the packaging requirements. RFID tags are coming into play with the government now. So it's important that companies read the actual solicitation and know what's in there before they submit their bid, whether it's on 1 item, 3 items, or 100 items.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ray, you were recently involved with the Young Entrepreneur of the Year.
Yes.
And I know you've had very intimate dealings with Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about him? Because he's a unique story. And I think he also used Score services.
Yes, when he started his business, he did use Score as well. He's a very energetic young man that has located his business in Millville right now. And he's a blacksmith, but I call him much more than blacksmithing. He does the design of custom ornamental iron work. Mm-hmm. And so if you go into the most exclusive houses in western Pennsylvania, you'll see railings that cost $50,000 to $100,000. And there has to be someone to actually make that. And luckily, we have a Pittsburgh-based business that is doing that and employing individuals to build that trade again, because it was a lost art. People just said, we'll outsource it and it will be overseas. But we're keeping that in Pittsburgh. And so Peter is named Peter Lambert, and it's called Red Star Iron Works is the business. Decided he wanted to have a design but also a manufacturing business. And he has around 10 employees currently, and he's planning to hire more. But as he goes through the process of just being a skilled artisan to a business owner, to the surviving, now he wants to be that successful one that's actually getting money out of every single week out of the paycheck and say, I'm paying myself now. And we're helping him with business planning on getting a location and financing right now, but also strategic planning. That's what we have to focus in on. But one of the things I think ties in that all the clients that we work with, and especially on the government contracting side, is pricing. Mm-hmm. Clients will think, well, if I could sell it just this time at cost, I'll be okay. My little phrase is, if you sell it for cost, you sell it for a loss. Mm-hmm. And so we have to work with Debbie's group and GEICO, and sometimes a Score will do a financial analysis to look at the real price of what you should be pricing your product or service for. And so that's something that we have to look at. But Peter is going to be a very successful business owner, keeping jobs in western Pennsylvania, keeping a very, very important base of manufacturing locally. And that's great to see instead of trying to go some other place, but he's staying in western PA.
Yeah. Oh, I know. What I find really fascinating, I've gone out and seen his operation. A very fine young gentleman, very humble. And it was so nice to see him tap 2 resources, which really amazed me that he took the initiative to go out and use the resources, your resources, and also Score, to help him grow his venture, and it's moving in a very positive direction.
If I can interject something, there's a myth that some of these resource partners of the SBA and other economic development agencies do not work together. But I can tell you that we work very closely with GEICO as well as with Score, and we joint counsel some clients where they can be a client of GEICO or they can be a client of Score, and we can work as a team. It doesn't have to be this isolation where you only have to work with one organization. And an entrepreneur needs different perspectives, and we all have different expertise, and so we have to build and work with each other. And I think that's something that you have championed since you've been here, Carl, is to make sure all of our organizations work and communicate and help the business owners in western PA.
Right.
And so that's very important. And I think we do have an excellent relationship with our 3 organizations of really making sure that the client is getting the exact service that they need. We may know a little bit, but there may be an expert such as retailing, Shirley Goldstein. I've worked with her on a SCORE volunteer for many years, and we've gone on joint calls, and she's an expert in retailing, and she'll lay it to them straight. And we work and help. I'll do some of the financial side, the break-even, the cash flow analysis, but Shirley will work on the store layout or some of the marketing. And that's where you get together. And looking at it, many times I'll get a call from Debbie, do you think you can work with this person down in Washington? And sure, we can help them out. But it's not like, well, we'll take them away and then we'll never send them back. That's what we need to focus in on. And business owners need to ask, the question is, can we work with other organizations? Or can we meet together? And that's something we have to do a better job in advocating.
Yeah, we typically have tried to silo each group versus saying, no, we're all here for the same purpose, and that's to help small business, and that's what I look at. But one of the things you brought up, Ray, and I think it's an excellent point, Barry, in your challenges, do you find businesses that actually understand that basic term called break-even?
First, before that, I want to reinforce what Ray has just said. I think it is important to work together. In fact, within the year, I was down at a national meeting where I was stressing this point with the head of the Small Business Development Center Association. And supposedly there's even going to be more impetus for us to be working together in the future. So I hope that comes. Well, pricing is very important. And before I get to that, on the government contracting end, from my experience, I've learned a factor I didn't know, which you just tell how you need to deal with people who have had experience. I represented a client who got a lucrative government contract. And they went in and they were supposed to design certain fixtures and buildings. And they saw the specs put the window for the attic in the basement. And they went back and tried to get this changed. The government wouldn't change it. And finally we learned, and we ended up going into a court of claims action, and we ended up getting paid for that. But we also learned that we just didn't know how to handle a government contract. Because you bid low, you build it the way the government tells you to, there are inevitably going to be mistakes, you then put in your change orders where you have no competition, and you price high, and you make your money. And we didn't know that. And now I know if someone is in that unique area, to counsel them to have a sharper pencil at the beginning, and they will make their money as they go along. But who, if you didn't have that actual experience, could pass on that wisdom to the customers?
If I may say something about government contracting and pricing, they're not looking right now at the lowest price. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking at the quality of the item, on-time shipping, and they're scoring companies based on that. And so it's the lowest bidder does not always get the award of the contract now. They're looking at various things at this point in time.
I think you bring something up excellent, Deb. And it was also just brought up earlier by Barry and things like that, is as we've gone more global, time has become very short. And so the government says, I want it now. It's kind of like, I need it here now. And if you say, well, it's going to take me 2 weeks longer, that has an impact, a ripple effect. And that's where the government really is, that's becoming one of its more critical evaluation tools, is your delivery time.
On-time delivery,
yeah,
absolutely.
It's not the cost. It's really, are you getting it there when I need it, type thing.
Well, there's also the current theory of scheduling your deliveries so you're not holding things in inventory, and when you need an engine to put in a car, it comes the day or the day before you need to put it in the car. And you have to have all this balanced out, and in doing so, you keep your costs down, and you get the products out more smoothly and when they're wanted.
I find it very interesting with many clients that we work with when we ask them, how do you develop your pricing model? And normally they give us, well, we multiply by X. That's just a multiple. They don't go through the process of really doing a true break-even analysis to look at all the expenses associated with operating the business. When you're pricing something, you got your materials, which everyone kind of knows, and their labor. They can do a pretty good job of estimating that, except for an unforeseen circumstance. But then that overhead factor of how much overhead do you really need to apply on a particular job. But I think entrepreneurs forget that fourth one. It's the profit. How much profit do you really want to make on the project? And so you need to spend time truly understanding your costs and calculating your true break-even point. Many owners are saying, well, cash is coming in, so I guess we're doing okay. We broke even this month. Well, that may not be the case. Look at the receivables. Look at the payables. And if you're, depending on that just-in-time theory of, well, we'll wait for our supply to come in the day before we're going to use it in our process. What happens if there's a delay? What happens if there's bad weather?
Those are the things you have to take into consideration. But if you're actually got your manufacturing up to snuff and you've already covered your overhead in the first 100,000 widgets you sell, then you actually can sell the remaining widgets for cheaper and still make your money.
You can,
if you're not violating some law.
No. I always thought if you could sell them for higher, we're going to sell them for higher. Sure.
Yeah, but you point out an excellent point. And lots of times that fourth factor, profit, when you talk to an entrepreneur, they think that's their salary. You know, it totally amazes me when I'm sitting there, oh, you mean how much I'm going to pay myself? And I'm going, no, you should already be paying yourself someplace in this formula.
It's like an investment. If you made an investment in a 401k or some type of stock, you expect a certain return each year. And what are you getting as net profit after you have a reasonable compensation for your personal expenses? But I ask that question too, is what is your goal? What is your financial goal? And what is your personal goal for starting and running this business? But also, we have to start talking about what are your contingency plans? And do you have a potential exit strategy? All those things come into play. And we're all pressed for time. And the business owner is always just trying to handle today's issue. But are they thinking strategically of what's next? And that's something that happens.
You're bringing up what I consider an interesting point. Especially when you're going into a partnership with someone else. I always have told anyone I deal with, whenever you put together a business deal, a business arrangement, you always work out the divorce provisions at the initial time you enter into the agreement to form the business. Because I found in my experience over the years, if you don't do it, then you're going to be fighting over that, and that's going to be the reason you break up. If you do it, it never comes up, and things run smoothly. So it's something to consider in all aspects of life.
And you point out an excellent point. I know when I have small business come in there thinking of starting as a couple or best friends, and they talk about, oh, yeah, we've been through thick and thin. And I said, no, you have not. This will be your test, and I'm giving you things you really need to think hard about before you proceed. And you're absolutely right with that. That is probably the one where couples and best friends do not understand the ripple effect when business doesn't happen the way they think it's going to happen, or one person they thought was going to do this and they didn't, and the other assumed something else, and it just becomes a big mess.
We've had unfortunate situations over the years at the SBDC and where we've had individuals that were siblings and said, well, we'll fight it out. We'll scream at each other, we'll cry, and then we'll work out all the problems and solve any kind of issue, and we don't need to have a formal agreement. Unfortunately, that doesn't work, as you well know. And some of the instances where they started a business, they've only been open for a year, but litigation associated with it after the fact is 2 or 3 years, and this is just your own brother or sister, and it's just not going to work. And so you have to separate the business versus the personal.
Right.
And we focus on family businesses issues a lot.
Yeah. And I think also, let's say you enter in with your brother or your sister or your wife, and the business is successful. Now you want to sell it to someone else. If you don't have all of these interpersonal relationship matters worked out, you're not going to be able to sell it. So you're not going to be able to realize the profit of selling it to Google and making $100 million and then going out and doing something else.
Yeah. And Deb, that comes back to something that I think you're experiencing right now with the big push with veterans and service-disabled vets. You're probably getting a lot of phone calls with people who are just getting discharged out of the military, things like that. They're saying, I think I want to start a business. I think I can sell product to the government and an idea, and they're coming to you for assistance of how to do government contracting. Are you seeing that?
We get a number of calls from companies that are veteran-owned or service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. If their business, of course, isn't established, we can't help them, so we're referring them to Ray for his assistance and also to SCORE. But, if they have an established business, we're there to help them, understand the processes of getting involved with federal contracting. Because right now, for service-disabled veterans, there is a 3% goal. The contracts are set aside for service-disabled veterans. So, the prime contractors also are looking for companies that are veteran-owned or service-disabled veterans to use as suppliers to help them with their subcontracting goals. So, we're seeing a lot of those types of businesses coming to us for assistance. Most don't know how to do business with the government, so they're there to utilize the services that we have.
Yeah, I find it very interesting that they worked in the government. In fact, some of them worked in procurement, in fact, in the government, and they don't know how the government system works. I find that very fascinating when they're coming out and they start talking about the ideas. And then what I find really interesting is what they did in the military. That's where they see their opportunity, and they're trying to figure out how to capitalize on that opportunity as they move forward. But I've also found people that are under the misconception, you correct me on this, that they think just because they got the tag of being service-disabled vet and they just put that on the business card and hand it to somebody, that somebody's going to give them a contract right off the bat.
There are a lot of individuals that think that way. And it doesn't work, It helps, but they've got to market their company to the agencies and the organizations that are purchasing their products. And they have to provide a quality product or service. Having that tag does help, but you've got to have the experience and the know-how behind you also.
Yeah, because I always tell people, the tag gets you to the front door so the door stays open. After that, you still got to do the bottom line of selling the product. And let's focus on that. The marketing, because I hear lots of companies lots of times are struggling, and they say, well, I got to get business, and they always come to me. I know lots of times it's probably the same for you. They're always trying to figure out how to get more money, and I'm sitting there saying, so I give you more money, what are you going to do different? How are you going to market? Who's your audience and things like that? Ray, how do you educate people how important marketing is to the bottom line?
It's an excellent issue to discuss, because if we have government contracting or just regular businesses just selling to private entities or individuals, the key thing we have to look at is diversifying your customer base. You can't be dependent upon just one sole source of customers and target market. In small business, you have a limited amount of capital devoted to marketing efforts. But how are they tracking their marketing efforts? They may just say, oh, we advertise. We place an ad in the newspaper or the yellow page, and they expect everything to come to them. There's the concept of viral marketing or guerrilla marketing, the low-cost methods. From the time you get up to the time you go to bed, you're marketing your business. And what are you specifically doing to make sure people know of everything that you can provide? A lot of times you're not even selling your customers on additional things that you could, products or services that you have available, because you're just focused on that one sale.
That's right.
And it's just expanding the horizon. And we really spend time with our clients to sit down and do a target market analysis of who are you selling to now, who should you be selling to. It kind of looks at the pros and cons. And we use a theory of ABC. We try to simplify everything as possible. We have our A customers. Those customers are the customers that you have the highest potential for growth. It's where the transaction earns the highest amount of net income or profit, and that's what you want to be focusing in on your marketing efforts. You have the B customers. Those B customers we call them the cash cows. They're the ones that get you to that break-even point. You can predict with a high level of certainty that you're going to get a certain amount of business each year from that customer and buy the same things. Those are the ones that pay the bills. But then a lot of times small businesses always focus on the negative, and they're focusing in on the losers. I call them the C's. They're not making any money, and they're developing their marketing strategies on C's. And you have to spend some time and go back and evaluate what should you be doing, and does it always cost money to market? It doesn't have to be placing another ad, it might not be making an additional investment in your website or whatever, but you have to look at all aspects. Marketing is the comprehensive approach you are taking to let potential customers as well as existing customers know what you can do for them. It's awareness.
I think now is the time also you have to look at changing technologies and changing habits. Does it still pay to advertise in the newspaper or in magazines? You have to evaluate that. Are people, is your target audience still reading the newspaper or magazines? If you're going to get on the internet, do you know how to work it so that you have the keywords on your web page so that the spiders crawling around looking for these keywords bring them back and you can be found by the search engines? Those are some of the things you have to be realized. You also have to realize that unless you're advertising a great sale, that you got to get in by 6 o'clock tonight, or we're not going to sell it to you, which we usually tell you don't believe. Okay?
Yeah.
Just putting an ad here or there occasionally is throwing your money down the drain, because most advertising is to get recognition over the long haul, over the long period of time. And if you don't have the wherewithal to do that, then you have to think of other things. Now, one beautiful area, if you can do it, is what we call public relations, publicity, free advertising. If you can get journalists, newspapers, television shows to feature your product or your service, then this is free, and it gets to a wider audience, and it's more believable because you didn't pay for it.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying, because I always tell people when I talk to them, I said, you're the expert, so take advantage of your expertise. Go speak at public things, the chambers, whatever. Put yourself on the list to your product, because it always creates a ripple effect, another opportunity for you to increase your sales and things like that. Dealing with. But Ray, you brought up an excellent point, that ABC, and I love that concept. When I ran my business, we actually had that, and what we did is we did reverse. Say, if we lost our facility today and we had to choose who our customers were that we wanted to keep with us, who would they be? And basically it was the ABC. Okay, these are our profit makers. These are the ones that keep us going to make our bottom line, and these we've just been nice to. So these are the ones that go, this is what we deal with. So it's an excellent point.
I think in marketing that we use a rule, and it's a rule of 7. In order for you really to get a customer to understand what you're trying to convey to them, it takes 7 times. And it's not just send them one flyer or send them one letter or just meet them one time. If you meet someone at a chamber of commerce or the networking, how do you follow that up? And you have to have persistence, and it's repetition. And I look at stability. What are you doing on a consistent basis to really let people know that you are there to help them out? And so you can't just do and expect, if you do a marketing effort one time and it didn't work, well, we should throw that out. We'll never use that technique again.
Yeah, and I think that hits to Deb's area, classic.
Yeah, government contracting, key is persistence, absolutely. And most businesses, not most, but some businesses think that, when they walk in the door, they're going to get a government contract right off the bat. And it just doesn't happen. And a lot of businesses do get discouraged, but I think they have to, just be persistent, because there are opportunities out there for any type of business, whether you're a service company or a manufacturer or distributor, but just get out, network, market your products, have those face-to-face meetings with the government contractors, because it's important to still have that dialogue going. Once they get to know you, you build a relationship with them.
And I think you bring up a very good point, because you're right. They figure they do 2 or 3 visits, and they figure they should get something that comes to them. They understand also the funding cycle. You know, typically this time of the year, coming up in the fourth quarter, that's when all the money flows, and that's when they do it. But yeah, you were out there in October, November, December doing your thing, and you said nothing happened.
Right.
Well, you forget that really the money flows at the end of the year, and that's where you should be understand it. You're building it for the end of the year to create your opportunities. But the other thing is, and I always talk to them when I ask people to say the government's not listening, they're not paying attention to me. I said, tell me about your customers in the private sector, and tell me how long it takes you to land a deal with them. And then when they start talking, I said, then tell me what the difference is. There is no difference. There's still somebody you're trying to sell your product to.
Right.
You may have to take a little longer. And I remember one veteran, and he listened to everything I told him. It took him a little over a year. But
he was successful.
He landed 3 contracts, and for the next 5 years, he's making $12 million a year.
Right.
You know, but it was persistence. But he called me, discouraged. He called me discouraged. Said, Carl, nobody's listening. I said, just do this and keep going. And now it's kind of his goal line. So that's what I find very unique in this. But you hit on something very classic, is marketing. But one other thing that I'd like to talk about is, and this is always seems to be the first thing that everybody always talks about, is I need money. Mm-hmm. And, it's like, I want to start this business and I need money. And it's like, okay, well, how much do you think you need? Well, I think I made $30,000. I said, how do you base that? Well, I think I need this and this. How do you deal with that, Barry, with the people coming in like that?
Well, the first question we get is, why won't the SBA give me the money? That's the first question. We have to tell them that the SBA guarantees it doesn't give.
Right.
The second question we seem to get is, well, where can we get a grant that we don't have to pay back? Well, we have to say that, well, if you are live in a unique neighborhood where there might be a certain development effort going on, or you are a member of a sub-minority, there might be some special grant money. The real truth is that there isn't going to be any grant money for you. So no one's going to give you money. So you first have to look at what your resources are. And can you fund yourself? Then you have to look at your family and friends. Can they help you out? And then you have to look at the bankers. And the bankers are going to look for collateral. Most of them do not. Some banks in this area won't even look at someone who hasn't been in business for 6 months. That's a fact of life. But you have to then get the banker to think about SBA guarantees, and if you're going to be a good candidate, and they'll support you for that. That's basically the quick and dirty that we're doing.
I think when you're looking at funding a business, you have to demonstrate risk.
Mm-hmm.
You, as the owner of the business, have to be willing to risk everything that you do have. And you can't expect someone else to fund 100% of the project or to give you money to start the business without you investing significant assets into the project. What I do think is important to highlight is there are many specialized programs or community loan programs that you don't have to do 100% of the financing needs from a traditional bank. You can partner with some of the community loan fund programs, or if it's in the city of Pittsburgh, the Urban Redevelopment Authority, or North Side here in the North Side Community Development Fund. And all the areas have specialized programs. And what we try to do is reduce the risk of any one entity, and then they're a little bit more tolerable on the amount that they are lending to you. And so you capitalize all the programs. You have to be prepared to invest everything that you have and also pledge your home. A lot of times I tell people if they're not willing to risk their home and sign their home as an asset and for collateral, then they're probably not ready, they're not confident enough in their business. And so that's something that they have to take into serious consideration. If they want to start a business, What are they willing to risk? And that's part of the process of helping them decide how are we going to find the money.
Yeah,
Don't expect 100% from someone else.
Someone who's thinking about going into a business in the first instance and has a 9-to-5 job that is pretty comfortable. You know, I try to say, are you willing to give that up? You can start part-time, but basically you're going to have to devote a lot of energy into getting your business going. It's a good way to go, but you have to be willing to give up the security for the eventual benefit. And then you're going to have to realize that you're not going to be working 9 to 5. You see the Chinese restaurants, they can be very successful. They may be keeping a family of 10 alive and healthy, but they all may be putting in 18-hour days. Mm-hmm. And if you divided up what you had to pay them per hour, you would not be profitable. But you are accomplishing your purpose of feeding your family, keeping your family together, and having a successful business, even though on an hourly basis, no one would want to go into that business if it wasn't for these other extraneous extra factors.
Yeah, but it comes back to something that, Ray, that you also brought up earlier in the program when you were talking about from the marketing aspect, you have to be diversified. And the same thing when you're funding yourself, you have to go in with the concept that you have to look diversified. Mm-hmm. Because if you're going into one area to try to pull your money from, odds are you're not going to get a dime. No. You have to look at how do I capitalize different resources to eventually bring me that pot of gold that's going to help me to move forward. But I think the one thing that comes out of this from our discussions is money should be your last issue when you're looking to go into business, or even if your business is struggling, it's looking at everything else that you're doing. Because lots of times when I go out to businesses that are struggling, it's the fact that they're not running efficiently. You know, they haven't changed what they've been doing for the past 20 years. The way they have their cost structure set up, they haven't changed with the times and everything. And it creates a ripple effect. And if they do some of those changes, they start seeing a positive net gain.
There's very few instances that we have ever worked with that if we had a good business model, good management experience, good potential, that we couldn't find someone. It may not be the total amount. Right. We'd have to do it in stages to get them to their ultimate goal. Mm-hmm. But that's where developing a good strategy comes into play and being realistic in your assumptions of how fast you are going to succeed.
Yes.
And that's definitely.
No, excellent point. Well, with that, this is Carl Knobloch from the SBA. And first of all, I would love to thank Barry from SCORE, Ray from the University of Pittsburgh Small Business Development Center, and Deb from GACO for taking time out of their busy schedules to come in here and talk to us how each one of you helps small businesses and at the same time shows how you actually work together to help small businesses. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come visit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure.
Once again, this is Carl Knobloch, and I want to say thanks a lot, and I wish you much success in your future business needs. Goodbye. Great job, guys.